Msaki attended the sentencing proceedings at the North Gauteng High Court, and she now joins us outside of the court. Patricia, a very good afternoon to you. Now, Joe Maringa told the court that he believes correctional supervision will be the best sentence for the convicted killer, Mr. Pistorius, and recommended that he should be sentenced to house arrest and only serve a minimum of 3 years. What does this mean for both the prosecution and defense?
Good afternoon, Alicia, and to our viewers out there. Yes, certainly, as predicted, we expected the defense to advance arguments and try and convince the court that it would be in the best interest of the athlete for him not to face formal jail time, for him not to, be punished to incarceration, and for him not to actually, serve his punishment within the normal correctional facilities, as we know most offenders would, of course, and that it would be in his best interest and obviously in the best interest of rehabilitating him and reintegrating him to society, and also preventing him from possibly re-offending, that he would rather serve his punishment outside the walls of prison. But I am now joined by a legal expert, Laurie James, who will unpack to us what exactly this means and whether it is fair or not. Laurie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It certainly has been an interesting day, but not a day that we did not predict. Most of us did predict that the defense would ask for correctional supervision. But what do you make of some of the conditions and arguments brought forward by Mr. Maringa?
Well, Mr. Maringa seemed to me to be a very unprepared witness. It was fairly obvious very soon after the cross-examination began that he had not read the judgment, and if he had read the judgment, his interpretation of the judgment was somewhat questionable or flawed. So he made his recommendations based on a judgment that he did not understand. He kept commenting on the seriousness of the crime. Now, the serious and referring to it simply as culpable homicide. And when Mr. Nell pushed him on whether he actually knew what the circumstances of the crime were, did he know that he'd armed himself, that he had a gun, that he approached, that he fired 4 shots at a closed bathroom door, intending to kill the person behind it, he had no idea. He really seemed to have come to court completely unprepared. His recommendation as well that on a 3-year correctional supervision sentence seems to me that really would not be in the interests of justice given the seriousness of the crime. But he also pointed out that we need to balance the needs of the offender, the needs of the community, as well as a punitive sentence to stop these types of crimes happening in the future. And these are all the focusing of sentence. So I wouldn't give too much weight to his testimony.
But it seemed like the state prosecutor advocate Harry Nell was obviously not satisfied with the arguments that he advanced, asking the question, what about the deceased and her family?
Of course, yes, and Mr. Nell rightly so. I mean, it was a very unbalanced report. Obviously, there'd been no communication with the family. There had been, with the Steenkamp family, their needs, they had not been discussed or put forward. I found the entire testimony that was given by that witness somewhat uncredible, to say the very least.
The fact that he came to take the stand in mitigation of sentence without reading the actual judgment, is it an error on the defense's part, or was he just ill-prepared? What happened here?
Well, in my opinion, he was just simply ill-prepared. Had the defense prepared him properly, they would have known that he was ill-prepared. So actually, they were both ill-prepared.
Now, of course, earlier before he took the stand, we also heard from his therapist, Dr. Lorraine Hartzenberg, who came to paint a picture of a broken man who have lost everything in his life. She even said earlier that some of his friends, especially common friends that he shared with Reeva Steenkamp, are judging him, have rejected him, have turned their backs on him. But it also, again, upsetted the state, who said that, she's only worried about one side, and it seems like her testimony was biased and that she sympathized with the Paralympian.
Well, you see, Dr. Hudsenberg is in a very difficult position. She was appointed as his counselor, as his therapist, as the person that gave him grief counseling and trauma counseling. She forged a relationship with him. It's a relationship of trust. She discussed holding him in her arms and allowing him to cry. Now, once you forge a relationship like that with a patient, and she was never going to testify. That was very clear from the outset. She said she would not testify. And then the defense asked her to testify and she was convinced to do so. So it's a very difficult position for a counseling psychologist to be in because she spent all this time. Now it's very difficult to paint him in a poor light. So what we saw there was that she highlighted his positive traits. She highlighted his grief, the fact that, in her opinion, he had taken responsibility for the crime, that he showed huge remorse, that he struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder, that he has an anxious disorder, on the work that he did in grief counseling. So that was her function. Now, to take a person like that and ask them to act in a forensic capacity, which is a totally objective report putting the facts before the court, good or bad, no matter how they are, to ask her to act in that capacity is extremely challenging.
All right. And that, of course, being our legal expert here at the North Gauteng High Court at the Oscar Pistorius murder trial, just giving us an update of what happened in the first day of mitigation of sentence. We will be back tomorrow again, and we are expecting the state to wrap up its cross-examination of his sport agent, Piet van Zyl. Thereafter, they will be calling the probation officer to testify, and she or he will stipulate exactly what conditions will be set out for the Paralympian should he get the correctional supervision as requested by the defense in this matter.
All right, that's Patricia Visagie outside the North Gauteng High Court on the day one of sentencing for Oscar Pistorius in the murder trial.